We're continuing on Chapter 9 of the Oversoul 7 series. The first book, The Education of Oversoul 7. Cyprus and Oversoul 7, beginning Part 3 of the examination. Oversoul 7 was the 14-year-old male again, and Cyprus was talking to him. "You seem to have been neglecting Lydia," she commented. Oversoul 7 concentrated as hard as he could, bringing his consciousness entirely into focus. They were in Lydia's study. Autumn leaves fell past the windows so fast that 7 blinked. Then, enlarging his visual, he saw that the room was a flurry of activity. 3 men were banging drawers open and throwing their contents on the blue rug. "You could have picked a quieter place," 7 said. "What's going on here? And is this another of those conversations that we have been going on without my conscious knowledge? They always confuse me." Lydia's family has sold the house," Cypress said. She decided it to them. She deeded it to them so that they could do what they wanted with their inheritance without waiting for her to die. "Couldn't you put that more delicately?" 7 asked grumpily. "That's how Lydia put it, as you'd know if you'd been keeping a good track of her," Cypress said. "But I have," 7 protested. "She had another stroke. It practically catapulted me out of Ma, and I helped her. Lydia, that is. In fact, until then I couldn't get out of Ma," 7 said, suddenly remembering. "You told me to identify with Ma as completely as I could, and I agreed, but I didn't realize how completely I could identify with her, or I might not have agreed so readily." He shivered. "All that body around all the time," he said. "They have their bodies around them all of the time," Cypress pointed out. She kept changing almost imperceptibly from a beautiful woman of intermediate age to a handsome man of indeterminate age. Every once in a while there was a moment when the two images merged, blended, achieved oneness and stability. "You seem to be having some trouble with your own physical form," 7 said. "If that was me acting like that, you'd give me 3 demerits." "I know more of myself than you do of yourself," she said, "so it's much more difficult, in fact almost impossible, to create a physical image to express my known reality. But I've told you that before." "You certainly have good answers," 7 said. The two of them were sitting nicely on the couch. 7 suddenly sprang up. "Look at that," he shouted. That laugh just dumped the entire contents of Lydia's shell collection on the floor. "That's no way to do," he yelled at the mover, and in a flash the shells flew back into the drawer. 7, stop that," Cypress said urgently. The mover turned around and stared at the drawer. "I could have sworn that I dumped all that stuff out," he said, turning toward the other mover. "Put it back," Cypress ordered. "Now." The shells went from the drawer singingly to the floor while the mover's back was turned. When he looked back, the drawer was empty. "Why, I did," he yelled. I could swear." "That's how rumors get started about places being haunted," Cypress said. "Well, they're Lydia's favorite shells," 7 muttered. "I don't like meeting here like this anyhow. Can we go someplace else?" "All right. Think of a cloud," Cypress said. She and 7 left immediately. At the last moment, 7 dematerialized one perfectly shaped shell to save for Lydia. He and Cypress emerged on a cloud just within the borders of Earth's atmosphere. "I want to give you a quick review before I tell you about the next part of your examination," Cypress said. "First of all, though, what did you learn so far?" Well, Seven said, frowning, I have trouble staying with Ma'a exclusively. At first I couldn't get away from her. Now I get called willy-nilly from one personality to the other as they get into trouble, and it seems like something comes up constantly for me to deal with. I lose my sense of perspective, he went on. Proteus still doesn't believe in anything but the good old days. Lydia doesn't recognize me, and I've always liked her, he said petulantly. Yosef knows me, more or less, but he just gets in needless trouble. Ma'a, well, I like her much better now, but I have the feeling that you're holding out on me again. I'm holding out on you, Cypress said, smiling. How about that shell? Seven just shimmered around the edges. Oh, that, he said. Well, I peeked into Lydia's future, and there's one place where she could really use it, where the shell could help her. That's what I thought, Cypress sighed. Now what's illogical about that statement? But there's a difference between ideal circumstances and practical action, Seven exploded. Cypress looked as stern as Seven had ever seen her, he said. All right, I know I'm supposed to experience time as they do, day by day, and I have. I've only snitched a few glimpses into the future. Into what? Cypress said. Into, the probable future, Seven amended quickly. Your personalities have free will just as you do, Cypress said. You must never forget that. You looked into one of the probable futures as they exist for Lydia, and at any point she can alter circumstances and choose one probable future over another. Do you understand? Seven nodded, properly chastised. Now let me explain this more clearly, Cypress said. You're Proteus, Lydia, Ma'a, and Joseph in all their probable presents, past, and futures, and yet they are themselves and also more than the selves they know themselves to be. And you, of course, are more than the Oversoul Seven you presently identify with, and you help them and instruct them when you can. Others who you may not recognize help and instruct you. And I'm part of them? Oversoul 7 asked. Precisely, Cypress said. But here, let me show you how it works, using images as a method of instruction. And before Seven's eyes, a wide, endless, flat surface stretched as far as he could see in all directions. Looking down, he saw all the centuries man had known and was knowing and would know, laid out like countries all at once. He couldn't see everything, though, simply because there seemed to be no end to the glittering surface. Cypress said, Now watch as closely as you can. I'm watching closely, Oversoul 7 said emphatically. This time, the endless flat surface became the top of an infinite circle, so that while the scene itself lifted up all space, Seven could only see a portion of the circle itself, and from each century other spirals constantly arose. I'm getting dizzy, Seven complained. Seven, pay attention to your lesson, Cypress demanded. Now all of that is just one point wherein creativity knows itself. So in Earth terms, probable present are born in each moment. The one that is physically materialized is the only one that your personalities accept as real. But you'll learn how to keep track of all of them, she paused and added theoretically. But in all of that, how can I know myself? Seven asked, reasonably enough, he thought. Do you know yourself, though? You do know yourself, though, don't you? You certainly know enough to ask questions, Cypress said. Your knowledge of yourself is self-evident. So is your lack of it, she thought, smiling figuratively. I got that, Seven shouted. Oh well, You are improving then, Cypress said. You wanted me to get it. You were testing me all along, Seven said, suddenly understanding. It takes the edge off my triumph. You may not know all of yourself, but that's a process of self-discovery, of becoming, Cypress said. The more you discover yourself, the more you are. I can hardly handle the parts of me I know already, Seven said sadly. But can't you show me more of the images? You just aren't ready, Seven, Cypress said, and you have to learn through direct experience. There really isn't any other way. Now for the next part of your examination. A jet passed by. Cypress and Seven dropped down on the top of it and rode along, occasionally looking down at the earth. You have to get through to Proteus and Lydia, Cypress said without pausing, and you have to get all of your personalities together in some way so they can better benefit from each other's separate experiences. How on earth am I going to do that? Seven asked. How can you do it on earth? She asked, smiling, then added, but Seven, you must become more involved in the activities of your personalities, but then I know you will. I don't like the way you said that, Seven answered, worried. And there's one thing I want to know. How long this conversation between us been going on? Before I came in on it, I mean. She just looked at him for a brief instant, the handsome man of indeterminate age and the beautiful woman of indeterminate age materialized again and merged, stabilized, focused, until it was so vivid and brilliant that Seven could hardly bear it. Don't you know? Don't you know? The musical voice seemed to come from everywhere, from inside Oversoul 7 and outside him, from the clouds and the jet. The words seemed to echo through time as he knew it and didn't know it, until he felt that Lydia and Proteus and Yosef and Ma'a were all singing and asking the question all at once. The phenomenon vanished so quickly and completely that Seven almost lost balance of his consciousness. What was that? He gasped. What happened? Every once in a while, you ask a really important question, Cypress said, or rather the question that you actually ask has a really important one hidden inside of it. Then you get an answer. But now I've forgotten what the question was, much less what was hidden inside it, Seven cried, and I don't know what the answer meant. Dear Seven, Cypress said, with some compassion, you do understand, a part of you does. But before you go back, I want to give you one hint. You make your own reality, and your personalities make their own realities too. But I know that, Seven said, disappointed. I thought you were going to give me a big hint. I have, she said, and I suggest that you begin with Lydia this time. Remember, you make your own reality. Seven mused about it, and you make your own reality, and instantly he lost track of the constant conversation, as Cypress knew he would. Bit of a short chapter today.